So I've been doing a lot of thinking. Today specifically, me and my wife had a great conversation. We're talking specifically about purpose, mission, goals for life, the meaning of life, and among a bunch of other things. And it was such an interesting conversation that we were having because the perspectives are different. And a lot of time, different perspectives come from childhood. So one of the things that was discussed was how people tend to live life based on somebody else's terms. They live life based on someone else's blueprint, right? And a lot of the times, the blueprint that people tend to follow is a blueprint that hasn't been tested. Typically, when you look at somebody and they are giving you advice as to what to do with your life, they haven't even taken their own advice. So one of the interesting things that we were talking about was how people that can give you a blueprint as to how you should live your life aren't the type of people that are living a life that you would want to live anyway. So when somebody is telling you, oh, this is what you should do, figure out what you need to do and, do that, right? Those people are still trying to figure out what they're trying to do with their own lives. You typically look at somebody's life before you take their advice in terms of, does this seem like a trusted source, like a reliable source? And unfortunately, you kind of have to judge based on the externalities of it, right? And you're judging based on somebody else's result. If you're telling me how to make €1,000,000, but you've never made €1,000,000, why should I listen to you as to how to make €1,000,000? Because if you knew how to do it, you would have done it yourself, right? So if we take that example and, look at it in terms of life for other people, if you're telling me what it is that I should do, why haven't you done that thing with your own life? And that's why I do find it, I make a point to listen to people. I listen to everybody, don't get me wrong. Listen to everybody, take everyone's advice on board. But I am selective as to what am I going to action. Which pieces of advice am I going to actually put to work? In terms of, am I going to listen to a person that's a millionaire that's giving me advice and telling me where the market's going in a particular area that they are proven to have expertise in? Or am I going to listen to somebody that isn't even in my field? You kind of have to weigh the pros and cons on each side and then make a decision based on yourself, right? So we thought that was really interesting. And it's also a thing where, when old people, I was watching a lot of videos on old people and all of the things that they said before they died or when they were old. And the most common thing that older people tend to have qualms about in terms of, do you regret anything in life? Their thing was, I should have been more true to myself. I think that's so interesting. It's like, I should have been true to myself. So does that mean that your whole entire life you weren't true to yourself and you were living for other people based on somebody else's rules and regulations as to how to live life, someone else's advice, what you should do, what you ought to do, and they might have not even had the result that you had? I thought that was so interesting because, younger people tend to have that in terms of that voice that they have. When the voice that they have, excuse me, the voice that they typically hear is a voice that is actually echoing the broader conscience of people. If I was to come out and buy a Lamborghini or a Porsche, right, just because of the fact I have that car, people would think that I'm somebody that is full of themselves, that, thinks they're better than everybody else, right? Whereas if you go to Dubai, that's actually just normal. It's normal every day. It's not this person's trying to flex. He's trying to think he's better than me. No, it's none of that. So it's actually a matter of the lens in which the people that you are currently situated view life. So if I'm in an area and they judge me based on the car that I'm driving, that I paid my hard-earned money for, and they believe that I think I'm better than them when I've never even said a single word, and someone in Dubai sees, wow, that's amazing, what do you do? How can I potentially do that for myself? It shows you the lens in which people view the world in a particular area. And that is actually one of the biggest things that holds people back. You know, before I went off and traveled the world, nobody understood why I was doing it. Nobody understood, like it didn't make sense. You left a good engineering job. You know, you just got married. You're just settling and starting your life together. And now you're just going to go off for 4 months, quit your jobs. You know, on paper, it doesn't make sense. And to people that would have given advice, it doesn't make sense. But one thing that I realized, and I realized this very young, a lot of the times the people that tend to give advice, or the only difference that the people that are giving this advice and the difference between their life and your life is that they just have more numbers on their age. That's the only difference, just a couple more numbers. And that doesn't even translate to having more experience, because somebody could have lived a full life yet not lived at all. Yet somebody could have lived 24 years and had a full life. Right? So age isn't really a determining factor. And because I'm a Nigerian, age is seen as such a high standard of, you know, basing somebody else's opinions, right? Because age typically translates to more wisdom. But that's actually not true. And you typically know that by just looking around. Look at people's results. Look at the lives that they're living. Is that the life that you want for yourself? 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be the same life that you want. So if you want those results, follow that advice. If you want better results, follow better advice. And not only that, follow the advice of people that you would rather, you know, be. The advice that you're going to follow from somebody, it has to be tried and tested. But not only that, the advice that people typically give is advice that they would have given themselves. But even then, their results aren't the same results that you want for yourself. And not only that, they also had their own lives to live. So let's take parents as an example. They lived their own lives already. And they lived their lives doing whatever they wanted to do. So why should I live my life based on what you want me to do when you lived yours based on what you wanted to do? Your life is a result of the decisions that you made in your life. Why not give me the autonomy to then make decisions on my own life? Because you did it for yours. It wouldn't be fair to want me to do what you want me to do with my life when you got to live your own life. You know? And I think that's interesting. Living for yourself is difficult, actually. And I didn't realize how hard it was until I realized, you know, the type of things that a person typically has to go through in terms of family, in terms of culture that they're born into. I can only speak for Nigerians, right? And the culture is typically go to school, work, marry, start having kids, and that's it. So I've already, at the beginning, done things unconventionally, right? In every area, I've done things unconventionally to what the typical roadmap would look like for a young Nigerian man. And one thing that I've realized, and it's crazy to say, is to, let me try to say it in a way that's, not offensive, but, it's to disobey your parents. And the reason I say that is because whatever you're disobeying, and it's a disobeying in terms of it's a positive outcome for you, right? It's for you to grow and you to get better. And if they're holding you back, you should disobey. And I'll stand on that. If they have a problem, tell them to come and talk to me. But ultimately, it's so that you can build your own life in the way that you want to build your own life. They had the autonomy, you also have the autonomy. But it's to disobey them as well because they're not going to change their opinion of you. They're still going to love you. And not only that, they're going to forget about it within a year. That thing is not something that is going to ruin a relationship, right? So that fear that you have of your parents, it's false, it's not real. I would recommend doing what benefits you personally. How can you grow as a person? How can you get more experience? And I'm only speaking about what I did. I'm speaking like this is what I did. This is how I have a lot of clarity, freedom, and understanding of not only myself, and I don't know how, if I listened to what my elders would tell me, I don't think I would live a life this fulfilling today. I wouldn't. Because the life that they prescribed was not fulfilling. But they meant well. Don't get me wrong. They meant well, but it wasn't fulfilling. It was very clear cut. It's very go to school, get a job, marry, have kids, and that's it. Go on your 2-week holiday a year. But I think it's typical for everybody. But I'm speaking specifically for this culture. Disobeying and doing what you wanted built character within me. I now have stories to tell. I've been to Thailand, I've been to Cambodia, I've been to Vietnam, I've been to Portugal, I've been to Spain, I've been to all of these countries. I can advise you on these countries. I've grown personally from being in these countries, backpacking, not knowing where my next destination is, not knowing where I'm going to even eat that day. Just going out, going with the flow and being able to just be free in a country, not being constrained by anybody's, what's the word I'm looking for? Not being constrained by anybody's opinions, expectations, none of that. It's clear of all of that. You can live for you. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I would recommend you disobey your parents because it can be fulfilling. And it's not to disobey in terms of they say don't go out clubbing and partying and taking drugs. You shouldn't do those things, right? I'm talking about if they're trying to hinder your personal growth, yes, you should disobey them. You should. Because number one, their opinion of you is not going to change because you're their child and they're going to love you. And they also don't need to agree with everything you do. They need to accept you for being an autonomous person that can think for yourself and do your own things without having to be constrained by their thoughts. You are a person separate from them. They live their life according to how they wanted to live it, so you should also do the same thing. You're a living, moving human being, and you deserve to honestly live a fulfilling life. Another thing we were talking about earlier was that kind of going back into how people live a life based on others' expectations, that they weren't true to themselves. People's opinions really scare people. People's opinions are the killer of a lot of dreams and a lot of, interesting adventures. People's opinions would have stopped me from getting married. It would have stopped me from traveling the world. It would have stopped me from going out and working instead of going back to college to get a higher level of certificate. It would, all of that stuff, people's opinions could have ruined a lot of things in my life. And I chose not to listen. And you know what's really difficult? When 10 people are all giving the same opinion, yet you still want to go contrary to what they're all saying. You still want to go based on your own opinion. But what that shows is that you value your own opinion over the opinion of others, even if it means you're alone. And that's very important. But it's also very difficult to hone that skill. And talking to my wife, having that great conversation, still trying to figure out whether it's something that you can even train, or if it's just something that it's either you have it or you don't, Yeah. I'd recommend you watch videos on what old people had to say before they died. What they had to say their regrets in life were. I really recommend it. And just do the opposite of what their regrets were. If they say that they regretted not being true to themselves, then you be true to yourself, man. You be true to yourself. If they say that they should have done something, then you should just do the opposite of what they regretted. Public opinion is you really are damned if you do, and you're also damned if you don't. So it's are you going to, just choose the one that's best for you specifically. Because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you can do something that can actually fulfill you, trust me, nothing else matters, man. When you're being true to yourself, everybody will respect you for it. Although they might not at the beginning, they'll come around to eventually respecting you for actually going outside the box. They always do come around. They always do. I'm just speaking from my own personal opinion here. This podcast is really just about me to document my own process and all of the things that I'm learning along the way, Yeah, I just think it's very interesting. Stay true to yourself. Because the court of public opinion is never on your side. A lot of things aren't on your side, man. So being true to yourself really is it's the only way. It's the only way forward. There's nothing else. There's nothing else, man. Because if you don't have that, what do you have? If you don't have experiences and some substance to you, what do you have? What do you have, I could die today and be very satisfied with how my life went. But I'm not going anywhere until I'm, in at least 100 plus. But I'd be very satisfied with how my life turned out. Why? Because I did everything that I wanted to do. I did everything I wanted to do. I went contrary to people's opinions, and the results that they said would happen never happened. And that's when I say that, people that are typically given advice are looking from a lens of, a true lens of fear, true lens of anxiety, because they don't know the unknown either. They don't know the end of that road. They'll only know the end of the road that they took. So they'll only know how to guide you through that road. And even then, they won't even know, because where they are is not where you want to be. Right? Yeah. Stay true to yourself. Research what old people said before they died. Do the opposite. Disobey your parents if it's going to um, build your if you're going to grow personally from it. If it's going to increase your personal growth, autonomy, independence, experience, broaden your horizons, you should. Because one thing I learned in 2023, I spoke about it already. It's very difficult actually to destroy your life. It's very difficult to actually do. It's not easy to actually ruin your life. It's fairly difficult if you have your head screwed on. It's fairly hard, and there's not a lot that you can do to really go like rock bottom, Listen, financially, like 2023 at the end of the year was a very difficult period, but we got through that, and then we ended up being in a surplus that we would have never even expected. So not only did we get through that, we didn't just survive, we actually ended up thriving by the end of the storm. And we didn't listen to anybody. So follow God, disobey your parents, but don't offend them. Don't fight with them over anything. But if it's concerning you and you're old enough, if you're over the age of X and Y, you should disobey them. Especially if it's going to hinder you personally. Yeah, and listen to what old people said. That's really it. All right. That's all I have for today. Thank you guys for listening. See you on the next one.